So good morning, Dr. A, and welcome to the first edition of Tea Time Chat with Anna. I am excited that you have agreed to speak with us today.
Good morning. Excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So just to give some backdrop, the last time you and I chat, we talked about grief and the holidays. And so we had a discussion on Grounded, which is your platform. And that discussion centered around grief as we approach the holidays. And I gave 4 tips. And so I want you to share with me how that rests on you. Let's just have a brief conversation on how those tips rested with you and some of the other things that came out of that interview. So just for reference, the 4 suggestions that I gave was to make a plan during the holidays, right? The second one is to be truthful to yourself and others about how you feel. The third one was honor traditions of your loved ones. And the 4th one is to try to avoid overeating, over drinking. I'm not going to expand on all those. I would ask that folks go to Grounded and take a listen, or YouTube, and she'll give you that information at the end of this tea time chat. So tell me, Dr. A, what did we talk about that rest on you in that particular conversation? What were those things?
Sure. The first portion of our conversation that stuck out to me was the part where we discussed the different examples of what constitutes grief. And through that conversation, I did not realize that I was grieving. And that was a big takeaway that I had, that when I went through my divorce or when I had a miscarriage, that those disappointments, I didn't realize that the feelings that I was experiencing actually constituted grief. It was one of those things where I thought, okay, well, yeah, I'm sad. I'm going to pick up. I'm going to go on. And this is a normal part of life. But I didn't acknowledge that what I was doing was actually grieving. So that's the first thing that I took from the conversation. The second thing that I took from the conversation.
Before you go to the second thing, let me just add here is that your reaction to the knowledge that divorce, miscarriages, pet loss even, are all grieving experiences, your recognition of that through that conversation is quite normal, because we're not really taught about grief. We don't really understand the emotions of grief, which is really why I started the work I do, was to help women, help people in general, to understand what grief is and what it's not. And sometimes we're grieving and it can be called other things when it's grief. And so I think it's important for the audience to define that grief is an emotional reaction to any loss that we experience: divorce, pet loss, moving, retirement. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing what you felt moved you in that conversation. So go on to number 2. What was the number 2 item?
Number 2 was when you broke down the aspect of what "I'm fine" meant. Because that is something that I think through my whole life, that you just become accustomed to. Well, how are you doing? It's just a natural thing to say, oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah. Even though you're not, and everything could be coming undone. It was, I know for me, when you talked about being honest about your feelings, I have to honestly admit and say that's something that I'm not used to doing. I think that I'm always conscious that if I say that I'm not fine, what effect will that have on my spouse or my children, who look to me for that strength and to be okay? So, I guess my question would be like, is it okay to not be fine?
Yeah, it is. That's a great question. It sounds, silly, but it's a great question. It's absolutely okay to not be fine. And it's absolutely okay to say, I'm not feeling this today, right? And so what we tend to do is it's because other people can't handle what you're about to say, right? Because what you named here was your son, your husband, your family. That was all about other people.
Yes.
So what's happening to us when we shove that down?
There's a feeling your people, your friends, your family, they need you to be fine, so you need to be fine. So it's
Yeah,
almost like this accelerated healing process, or which, let's be honest, is usually not a healing process. It's kind of like
not at all.
not
Not
at
at all.
all. And
Not at all.
I was recently sharing with someone that I did not realize that it has taken me decades to get over things that happened to me, and like finally realizing that I'm healed. But you would have think I would have been healed from these things 20 years ago, but I didn't realize it's because I wasn't dealing with them. I was
Right.
saying I'm fine, and I
Correct.
really wasn't fine because they had a way of still popping up in other areas of my life. They were never just gone.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
that's a big revelation that I took, that made a lot of sense from the discussion that we had.
Absolutely. I love talking about this work, and part of the reason why we shove this stuff down and we don't talk about it is because we've been socialized to say, I'm fine. We've been socialized to tell people, get over it.
Yeah,
Just replace the loss, get another dog, right?
yeah,
Be strong. And basically what you're saying is, I'm fine for you is being strong for other people. But
yeah.
in the meantime, emotionally, you're the person in turmoil on the inside, right?
Yes.
And this stuff will manifest itself in other areas of our lives. It will come up,
It
it will
and
come
it did.
out,
Yes.
and it may not be good.
And
So
you're absolutely right. And yeah, what we don't deal with will come out in other ways.
that absolutely. So part of the work that I do in the grief recovery method, which is, by the way, the grief recovery method is a program through the Grief Recovery Institute that I took certification classes in some time ago. But part of the beauty in the work I do is watching people grow and blossom, face their pain, right? Don't shove it down. We have to face the pain. We have to face our grief. We have to face our loss. And then we need to pick up and begin to move forward in our lives. And most of the time, if you, as you pointed out, you were stuck in things that you didn't recognize as grieving experience. So I would just simply say that you were stuck. And
Yeah.
so when we're stuck, we know what the word stuck means. It means we're moving, but we're really not going anywhere. Things are happening, but it's not the things that we want to happen. So a lot of times we're stuck in our lives and we don't understand why. And then we don't seek the necessary help in understanding why, because it's difficult work. Let's face it, this is not easy work. No one raised their hand to do grief work, right? And no one raises their hand to be a grief recovery specialist. It's work that you're drawn through your own personal experience, and brave enough because of your faith to exercise the gifts that God's given you. So I want to thank you really for being transparent. I just released the blog this week. It's Grief in the Holidays, and with the same suggestions that we're talking about here. And so in that, well, I should say grief in the holidays, but holidays and special days, because special days like birthdays and anniversary also trigger grief-like emotions. So in that, I do talk about, and by the way, you can find that blog on al-woods.com, and we'll have all this information for you at the end of this tea time chat this morning. But yeah, when we overeat or overdrink, let's just say when we overindulge in any activity that's not healthy for us, it will have a negative effect on our health. So it's really not just eating and drinking. Those are the two that I talked about specifically in the blog that I put up this week. But really overindulging in anything could be unhealthy, right? Absolutely. And so it becomes a substitution for what we're really feeling, right? That's why in the blog I say, be truthful to yourself about how you feel, to yourself first. Mm-hmm. Because until we're truthful with ourselves and the fact that I'm grieving and I feel sad today, then it's really difficult to be truthful to anyone else, right? So we have to face ourselves and our grief before we even begin to face the things that are external outside of us. So Dr. A, you had some really great points that you shared about that first interview. And is there anything else you want to share before we sign off of this first tea time chat? Anything else you
want
want
to
to share with
thank
the audience?
you for just putting grief in the forefront and normalizing it for people, because you're right, nobody wants to raise a hand and talk about grief. So more of just a thank you for just putting grief in the forefront, because it's something that at some point or another we all have to deal with.
Right, absolutely. So, and I want to thank you for volunteering to come and be transparent on the first Tea Time Talk with Anna. We'll have episodes to come, and really, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you this morning. So, you know what? Let's keep talking. We'll
Let's
talk
keep
soon.
talking. Thank
All
you.
right.